Great.
So it's all yours.
Okay, thank you all so much. Can everybody see that? See the screen?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. We're gonna go to presentation mode. So, my name is Pamela Berg. I'm with the League of Women Voters and the president of the local League of Arlington and Alexandria City. I also want to take a minute to acknowledge and introduce my colleague, Connie Potter. Can wave. Thank you, Connie. Thanks for being here. So I want to thank you all very much for the invitation to speak to you today. This is an important topic in a rather politically difficult environment. Indeed, it's been a challenging environment for several years now, and we'll leave it to the historians to give language to this era that we're living through. But I'm very glad to have the opportunity to share with you who we are and what we do, and hopefully leave you with some assurance that elections in Arlington and around Virginia are secure and trustworthy. So like a little heads up, the slide deck is a little bit sensitive, so I hope it will not be jumping around too much during the presentation. So today I'm going to cover a little bit about the League of Women Voters. I'm going to go over some key pieces of information for the election. I'm also going to discuss two key mis and disinformation issues, and finally provide you with some early voting and other election information. And feel free to stop me if you have a question. That way you don't have to focus on remembering your question till the end, so that will be welcome. Okay. So the League of Women Voters grew out of the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920 that gave women the right to vote. It was the merger of the National Women's Suffrage Association and the National Council of Women Voters. And its founding goals were to educate women on election processes and lobby for legislation favorable to women's issues. But since its inception, the League of Women Voters has had a steadfast commitment to nonpartisanship, because allegiance to any political party would adversely affect the independence of the League. So we are strongly committed to nonpartisan. The League of Women Voters today is a national organization that works to protect and expand voting rights so that everyone is represented. And we do this through advocacy, education, and litigation at the local, state, and national levels. And we have members that are men, so men can join the League of Women Voters. We have a couple of them in our own league. And so we're still educating today, and not just women, but all citizens, so that they can freely exercise their right to vote. And today we are organized at the national, state, and local levels. So as the graphic shows here, we have the national level, the state level, and our group, which is Arlington, Alexandria City, we are one of about 14 leagues throughout the state. We also have membership in what's known as the National Capital Area League, comprised of Washington, D.C., Maryland, people that surround, or groups that surround the D.C. area. Okay. So I'm going to dive right into our message today. I'm going to go over each of these separately. Contacting your elections office, checking your registration, information on early voting and drop boxes, and making a plan to vote. So nearly the last 10 years have seen a dramatic rise in voter education and mis and disinformation. Much of the mis and disinformation comes from spaces where the general public doesn't have a view into the process, so they can't see it. I call them black boxes because you can't see into them. And I'm going to be sharing one of those with you today when I talk about the chain of custody of ballots later in the presentation. But I bring that up to say, We've spent the last couple of years debunking and pre-bunking election and voting information. And the environment is saturated with mis and disinformation that has created significant mistrust of our elections where there was none before. And so this is truly an unfortunate state of affairs. So we've been dealing with it as best as we can, but it's to that end that I want to say to you, if you ever have a question about the elections, call the elections office. Don't Google it. Don't ask your friends. Don't go on social media. Literally call the elections office. You can go on their websites also. Those are the people that actually do the work, and they can give you the most accurate information. And of course, our local registrar in Arlington is Gretchen Reinmeyer. There's their website and their phone number and her email. They are extremely helpful and can answer any question if you're ever in doubt. Okay. So our typical opening line at any community event is, "Are you registered to vote?" But this year we're adding another one, and it's, "Have you checked your registration?" The current political environment with the high level of mis and disinformation has made it necessary to publicly message, check your registration in our communities. So, but even aside from the political environment and the intensity of it, honest accidents and mistakes can happen. So you can check your registration at the website shown here. This is the Department of Elections for the state of Virginia. This is the citizen portal where you can register to vote, check your registration, find your polling places, and apply for voter absentee by mail. And so I advise you to check your status even a couple times leading up to this election. So if you intend to vote early or absentee, we recommend you do it earlier in that process rather than later. And this year, we're strongly recommending the use of drop boxes to return your ballot because it puts the ballot back into the hands, directly back into the hands of the people that sent it to you. If you choose to mail in your ballot, we strongly recommend you do it before 25 October, at least 10 days out from the election. And this is just steps that you can take to ensure that your ballot arrives safely. And lastly, the final point that I want to make here is to make a plan to vote. So it's a simple thing to do, but it helps so that it doesn't get away from you. And so it's similar to helping yourself, follow through in a plan, like having to get your car inspected or a dentist appointment or something like that. If you work through this plan, you can likely handle changes in scheduling, like if you had to work late or had an appointment run over and you had to run to pick up the dry cleaning, you've already worked out a voting plan and you won't have to scramble around at the last minute. So we strongly recommend making a plan to vote. How, are you going to vote on election day? Are you going to vote early? You're going to use a drop box or by mail? So those are good things to work out ahead of time. So I'm about to change gears here to talk about something else. Is there any questions on this particular section that you want to ask now? I can see you speaking, but I can't hear you.
We've heard a lot of noise about ballot harvesting, people collecting ballots from other people and depositing them in drop boxes. Is that legal? Is it illegal? I've got a friend who's housebound. Can I pick up her absentee ballot and take it to the drop box, or, what do we do?
Yeah, it depends on what the state law is, and I can actually look into that. Connie, are you aware whether or not people can drop ballots for other people?
You're
on mute.
muted, Connie.
Yeah.
Yes. You can drop off a ballot for a friend. And I'm going to explain a bit of a process here so it explains why you can do that. We pick up the ballots every day. They're taken back to the elections office and scanned to make sure that the ballot has been received. If there's any problem, any question with that particular ballot, it is found then. Does that answer the question? So,
Yes.
yeah, I don't believe you can collect 30 or 40, but if your friend is housebound, yes, you can drop it off.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe also that across the United States, that I think at the state law level, there's laws about whether or not, and how many ballots you can take. So yeah.
Yeah, we'll follow up on the exact number for you.
Yeah.
And just one thing to promote the drop boxes is when you drop it in the box, it is picked up that day and delivered to the elections office. Mail sometimes does get mislaid. And so with the drop box, you're assured that your ballot is getting to the elections office.
Okay. Thing wants to jump ahead. Gary, does that answers your question? Okay.
Yeah, but I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
Where are the drop boxes going to be this time around?
That's on slide 14.
Okay, stay tuned.
They haven't changed except for one edition.
Oh,
Right.
I actually use different ones, so you'll see it when we get there. Okay, so now what we're gonna switch over to, I'm gonna talk about a piece of misinformation that's been making the rounds. And then also I'm going to go over ballot security. You know, what happens to the ballots once you've voted? And that's referred to as chain of custody. So I'm going to start that off now. I imagine you're hearing a lot about non-citizens or illegal immigrants voting. And here's what you need to know about that. It's against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections, period. Federal law requires that all registration forms across all 50 states have a penalty of perjury clause in them. So if you look at, for example, Virginia's voter registration form, the very top is, are you a citizen of the United States? Yes or no? And there's also a penalty, you know, if you lie, well, signing the form under penalty of perjury if you lie about that. And the other thing that I want to bring up is voting illegally in the United States is not something immigrants or non-citizens are motivated to do. It would jeopardize any effort to become a citizen. And if they were here illegally, they likely do not want to draw attention to themselves. So they're not going to be participating in behaviors that are going to call attention to themselves. So has this ever happened in the past? And the answer is yes. Very few immigrants have illegally voted, and likely most of these were honest mistakes or misunderstandings. And how that can happen, so in Virginia, for example, when you go to the DMV to renew your license or to get a driver's license, there is a question about whether or not you want to register to vote, and it automatically does it unless you opt out of that question. And so that's you know, where people that are here that can work legally, they can get a driver's license in Virginia, a privileged card or something like that is what it's called. And if it accidentally has gone through to the Department of Elections to register them, they will catch it there. So that, you know, things like that can be the source of rumors of millions of illegal citizens or non-citizens voting. And then I also, well, I wanted to go back to share some of these statistics of studies that were done, one in North Carolina in 2016, 41 incidences of non-citizens voting out of 4.8 million voters. Georgia in 2022, 1,634 attempted to register but couldn't. And the Brennan Center across 3 of the heaviest immigration or immigrant populations in the United States, Arizona, California, and Texas, found 30 incidences across these states. So, but I also wanted to share that no state currently allows non-citizens to vote in their state elections, but 3 states, California, Maryland, and Vermont, and Washington, D.C., do allow non-citizens to vote in municipal elections such as school board and county board. Okay. Moving on. So I wanted to talk a little bit about ballot security because a lot of mis and disinformation can come from this space as well. And as I alluded to earlier, because it's not visible to the public, what happens to ballots during and after elections has been the source of mis and disinformation in recent years. I wanted to take this opportunity to present you all exactly what happens to ballots during and after elections and what the chain of custody refers to. So before I get to that, and just briefly, I want to talk about what does a secure election actually mean? So when I sat down with Arlington Registrar Gretchen Reinmeyer, I asked her that very question. And all of the items here contribute to secure elections from a technical standpoint. There are paper copies of every ballot, voting machines are tested, post-elections audits do confirm results, and there's multiple checks and balances throughout the process. And certainly these tactical aspects of a secure election, they are tactical aspects of that. But I also really appreciate Gretchen's answer, what for her was a secure election, that ultimately the ballots reflect the will of the people. As all the technical steps taken are for the purpose of doing exactly that, ensuring that the will of the people, the will of the voters prevails. So I'm going to take a few minutes and share with you a general overview of chain of custody of ballots and what that looks like. Okay. There we go. Okay. I think I've got a little bit ahead of myself here. Okay. So there's a lot to the process, and it can also get very technical, but I didn't want to get down into the weeds with this stuff. But for our purposes today, I think it's enough for me to give you an overview of the processes so that you have an idea of what happens. There's going to be 2 slides. There's going to be this one for Election Day, and then there's one behind it for the mail-in and Dropbox procedures. So as a voter, in my experience on Election Day, I fill out my ballot and I get my sticker, and then I go about the rest of my day. But what happens to that ballot after I voted? And this is what's referred to as chain of custody. So after somebody, starting at the top left, after somebody casts their ballot through the scanner, the ballot drops into a box. At the end of the day, when voting is completed, all of the ballots are sealed in a secure box, and they're transported to the elections office. The secure box has the election officers that worked at that precinct that day, has signatures on the seals of those boxes. And so they're a secure container, and they're transported to the elections office. And this is usually around 10 o'clock at night, something like that. At the elections office, in the secured part of a garage beneath the building, elections office staff take custody of the ballots, and they're stored overnight in a secured room. And the next morning, all of the election ballots are turned over to the clerk of the court, and they will become the property of the clerk of the court. So even the elections office does not have possession of those ballots or access to those ballots once they're secured there. And so for early voting in person at the sites that where you can vote early in person, it's a similar procedure. It's the ballots are returned each day or each evening to the elections office. And then it keeps going back and forth. Okay. Now, for the ballots that were used in early voting and returned through the mail or drop box, it's a similar procedure whereby the ballots are received by the elections office daily throughout the early voting process. Drop boxes, as Connie said, are picked up daily with secure bags to hold the ballots, and the elections office regularly receives ballots sent through the mail. These ballots are pre-processed, meaning that they're scanned through a machine just like the election day ballots are and stored in a secure container. And like all other ballots, they ultimately will become the property of the clerk of the court. Does anybody have any questions on that process?
Is that process the same everywhere, or is this specific to Virginia?
So the way that I understand it, it's very close to similar everywhere in Virginia, because I believe there's state law that regulates that. And you might have slight differences in Alexandria and Arlington, but they're only going to be very slight. But in terms of the security of those ballots and the procedures put in place to secure those ballots, that I would say is widespread throughout Virginia because it's Virginia law. Connie, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and I just saw a chat about who and when are the ballots scanned. I work in the elections office, sometimes in pre-processing. There's one person who scans the ballots, and we really don't start scanning until the end of the election. And both before and after the ballots are scanned, they're securely stored. Does that answer the question? If not, let me
So
know.
I guess, I think the question was, you've been collecting and scanning these ballots, when we vote, they go through a scanner.
Mhm.
At some point, somebody totals up all the
Correct.
numbers
Right.
to come to
The,
the final answer. And I think that was the question.
Okay.
Who does that and
In-
when?
In each of the scanners is how the words, the things you plug in. My mind is
Yeah.
going,
The thumb
Like a
drive.
it's counted.
a
Yeah,
USB
it's
chip.
counted. Yeah, so they're counted automatically. And when you work at a early voting, every morning you log in how many ballots you've given out and how many have been scanned. Now, if you go to vote and you think, oh, I really didn't want to vote that way, and you haven't cast your ballot, you can go back and get another ballot. At the end of the day, that fact is noted in the number of ballots that have been cast, plus maybe one that was returned. So every single ballot is counted and accounted for.
But in terms of the tallying, that's on election.
Yeah, and that's
they're
not
loaded.
done. The only ones that are done by hand are ones that can't be scanned. And sometimes those are ones that come from overseas, or somebody has, their ballot isn't clear. And those are hand counted, they're entered into the computer, and then somebody else reviews every one of those hand counted ballots and make sure that there are no mistakes.
Okay, the next question is, what's the process of getting the returns to the media?
The elections office announces that after they have complete returns. So every precinct will call in, and there's a form you fill out, and you'll go for president, so-and-so got so many votes, so-and-so got so many votes. Then when all 54 precincts have been counted, then they release it to the press. Now, because Arlington has ranked choice voting for the county board, these may not be final numbers, but they release the preliminary numbers the night of the election. And then we'll update them as soon as they can.
Now, we've heard conspiracy claims of voting machines switching votes and, you know, stuff like that. What kind of after the fact spot checking happens to compare the paper ballots to the actual reported numbers to make sure that those agree?
First of all,
So-
the scanners are not connected to the internet at all. They all go onto one of these sticks. So there's no way that anyone can get into the scanner and change the numbers. And then after the election, they have, I think it's called logistics and accuracy test, where they take the clerk of the court provides some ballots, and it's a hand recount. It's statistical. We don't do it. They don't do everything to verify the accuracy of the
Well,
counts.
Just let me jump in for 1 second. The logic and accuracy are done on all voting machines prior to
Yeah.
the election. The risk limiting audits are run on the other side of the election to make sure
Yeah.
that they balance. And there's a paper ballot for every single vote. So I don't know off the top of my head what the law is in Virginia. I want to say it's like, if you have an election that is within 0.05, the state will authorize, or the localities will authorize a recount. If it's more than that, then the campaigns have to pay for a recount. But in terms of the ballot switching, yeah, it's just not something, it's kind of like an urban legend, and Fox News ended up paying a pretty significant settlement, something like $780 million for basically ruining Dominion's
Yeah.
reputation. So and that kind of information has been extremely damaging to a system that up until, all of our lives we have trusted our elections process. Our election workers and volunteers, they're our neighbors. They're not, so this is something that's been really unfortunate. Connie, did you want to add
Pam is
anything else? Yeah,
I would say Pam is correct. It's called risk assessment the second time.
yeah, risk limiting, yeah.
Or, yeah, I got the
And
two names
that's
confused.
there's a state law that requires risk limiting audits, but not every year and not every precinct. They rotate it through the process.
Yeah.
So like Fairfax County might, like this year, it might be Fairfax County's been selected to do a risk limiting audit, which is a statistical audit. And then next year during the governor's race, Richmond might get it. I can't remember off the top of my head how many localities are done, but it'll be a certain number of localities that have to do a certain number, or a certain number of localities doing a risk limiting audit to ensure that the results were accurate.
Okay, we've got a question. Has the ballot count ever been challenged in Arlington?
I think once years ago, I could get more details, but it hasn't happened since I've been working with the elections office since 2016. So
Okay,
I
another
think it happened
question.
like several years ago. And it
Do-
made, that's all I want to
Oh.
say. I don't recall, because I mean,
Okay.
I could find out, but
All right, do Arlington and Alexandria election officials ever collaborate with officials in other jurisdictions about potential problems?
I would say
the
that yes, they do. I think that there is a
mhm.
association of registrars in Virginia, and they meet
Yeah.
regularly. I think that there's the EAC, which is the election, that's a federal a federal organization, but the information sharing you know, if you see something in Fairfax and they're, you know, I'm sure that they would alert Arlington, Alexandria. I think they do exchange information and keep each other informed about what's going on.
Okay, I
Hello?
don't think we have any additional questions. Oh, hang on.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes?
Okay, here's my
do you have a-
question. Yes, this is my question regarding ranked voting,
Hmm.
which is ranked voting exclusively for Arlington throughout Northern Virginia? Because I personally do not like or dislike rank voting. If I'm voting for a particular person, my vote should go to that person. So would you please give me some sort of more information on rank voting locally? This is not national. This is locally. And okay, that's
All
it.
right, thank you. So in terms of where you can do this in Virginia, Virginia passed a law that authorized localities to do ranked choice voting. And Arlington County was the first one that went. A couple days ago, Charlottesville passed a ordinance for ranked choice voting, and Richmond had declined it. So what we can only do it at the local level, like school board and county
Yes.
board at local elections. But it's authorized throughout the state. And I can give you a lot of information on ranked choice voting. I can send that to my contact that reached out to me to do this engagement, and I can put you in touch with people that understand ranked choice voting very well. It can seem very complicated, but I can provide you with a lot of information about that so that you know what it is and how it works. And yeah, I'll be glad to do that.
And in Arlington, it's just the county board.
Right.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
All right, so we've got one more question. Does the League of Women Voters worry about the election outcome regardless of who wins?
I can't speak for the whole League of Women Voters, but I'll tell you my personal opinion. I'm not so much worried about the outcome of the election as I am what could potentially happen after the election. And yeah, we're concerned about in light of January 6th. Yeah, we're concerned about what's going to happen. I haven't heard anything, you know, specifically, you know, in my network of folks, but I think like a lot of people across the nation, yeah, that they're worried about it or concerned, I guess. So hopefully, I think I also want to say that when you work closely with the elections office, the way that Connie does, or my interaction with election offices here, these people are pretty phenomenal at what they do, and they're very dedicated, and there's people working very hard to make sure that these elections will be secure. So yeah, we'll hold our collective breath until November 6th. Okay, we ready to move on?
Well, hang on, we've got one more.
Okay.
Does the League of Women Voters have a position on the Electoral College determining the election outcome rather than who wins the popular vote?
Yes, we do.
Mhm.
The League of Women Voters for a long time, I think, you know, the last time they tried to get rid of the Electoral College was in the early 70s. And the position of the LWVUS is they prefer the direct election of the president and not the Electoral College. There is a new, well, it's not so new, it's about 20 years old, national popular vote effort. I can come back and give you a talk on that if you like. This is a using, this can get into a complicated conversation about the Electoral College, but there's something called National Popular Vote. You can Google that and learn more about this process. And this is essentially, when you look at the Constitution of the United States, it says that the states will determine how to count how to run their own elections and how to count their ballots. The state can decide, we want to use the national popular vote or as a means to elect a president. You're probably going to start seeing a lot more about this, because there's about maybe 15 or 16 states that have passed this law. I don't know them off the top of my head. I'll be glad to come back and do a separate presentation on national popular vote. In fact, I would love to, because that's something that the league is getting behind. Because changing the Electoral College is going to take some effort to do that. You'd have to change the Constitution. And so there are other ways to do that. And I'd be glad to share on that at another time. I hope that answers the question for now.
Yes, and I'll note that Steve has just posted a link to the National Popular Vote website. So
Great.
check in the chat and you can go there after we're done here.
Yeah, that's a really, I sit in on their monthly meetings. That's I've been with that organization since 2018. And it's a good place to get all the information about it and explain the process. So. Okay, more questions?
No, I don't think I see any now.
Okay. Okay, here's the fun part where all the information comes. And this is the early voting locations, acceptable ideas and IDs. And then I want to share with you about Vote 411. These are the early voting locations in Arlington. You can also get this information off their website, so you don't necessarily have to take a picture of it or write it down. You can go to the elections office in Arlington. I can pull up that address in just a bit. It's on the previous slide, what their webpage is.
Pam, just one thing I want to note. The Longbridge Aquatics and Fitness Center does have a drop box, but the drop box is inside the the polling place. It's not outside like it is at Courthouse, Madison, and Walter Reed.
Yeah. And speaking of drop boxes, here are the sites for the drop boxes. And these drop boxes are 24 hours a day. They'll be available from September 23rd until 7 p.m. on November 5th. And Connie will pick up your ballot. Hopefully. Pick up some of them.
Many of them. Many of them.
Yes. And this is also on the website, on their website also. And then also these are the forms of ID, acceptable forms of ID at polling locations. And I also want to draw your attention to the fact that we have curbside voting. It's available for people over the age of 65 who are physically unable to come into the polling place. If they want to go, if they don't want to vote absentee, but they want to go to the polling place, we have curbside voting. Oops. And then I also want to tell you about Vote 411. Vote 411 is a tool developed by the League of Women Voters. God, do you know how long ago, Connie? 20, 30 years ago, maybe longer? But the website will be completely filled out for this current election on September 20th is when the information will be available. Through that, you can register to vote, request a ballot, verify that you're registered to vote. You can see sample ballots. We also, what the league does is send standard questions to all the candidates. Some of the candidates reply, some of them don't, but you can read the answers to their questions and you can get information about the Constitution amendments and bond issues. So again, after September 20th, you can go to www.vote411. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you all is what the Arlington and Alexandria League. So I've been president for just over a year. And one of the things that I'm concerned about specifically is, voter turnout in Arlington and Alexandria has some of the highest voter turnout in presidential elections. It's like 75 to 80%. But when it comes to local elections, not very much at all. And so I would like to do educational programs starting next year about the importance of voting in local elections and bring that turnout up a little bit. And most of the issues that affect, our daily lives are done, at the local level. So, and in fact, I can send a flyer over to you all. We have a educational program happening on Thursday, is tomorrow night, at Arlington Central Library. And this is the first of a series of educational events that we're having. And this is going to be, it's about elections in Arlington. It will be the registrar, Gretchen Reinmeyer, the elections office. What is her role compared to what is the role of the electoral board? And so that will be, I think, a very interesting to see the different roles that these folks play. I can send you all over a flyer if you'd like to sign up for that. And I think that is all I have for you today, and I will be glad to take some more questions and stop sharing.
Okay, I have seen or heard reports of people, claiming that they're interested in election integrity, but what they're planning to do sounds an awful lot like voter intimidation. Are you picking up on anything like that going on in Arlington or Alexandria? And if I'm at a polling place and somebody's, videotaping or questioning people or doing anything like that, what do I do about it?
Okay. We have not heard about that specifically in Arlington and Alexandria, but it does go on around the country. And I think there was a little bit of it in last year's election in Fairfax County. There is a hotline that you can call, and I will get that information to you. I'm writing down what RCV, and there's a line, there's a number that you can call where you can report incidences like that, and I will get that information back to you through my contact. I'll be glad to do that. Fortunately, at the last several elections in Alexandria and Arlington, there have been no real incidences of that. Connie, do you know of any taking place in Arlington and Alexandria?
You're muted, Connie.
You're on mute.
Also, the polls watch out for anything like that. So if there's a problem, they try to catch it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my question.
But I haven't,
and
having worked at the polls, haven't seen a problem here.
But so you could just go in and talk to one of the poll workers and say, hey, this is
Yeah.
going on right outside.
Absolutely. Yes.
I
you
would
can.
suggest you do that. Because you have to hand out those information things, you have to be at least 40 feet away from the polling center.
Yeah, the last election I went to, somebody was much too close and they were shouting at the poll workers who were trying to move them back, beyond the line. And so
Yeah.
clearly things like that can happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we got a comment to that effect. Election officials can request poll watchers to move away from the doors, and she's seeing it happen in her precinct.
Okay.
Also, any thoughts about which generational cohort will turn out the most this year?
Well, that's gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna be the 18 to 32 or 34. Connie, who do you think it's gonna be?
I'm gonna look at the statistics after the election.
Okay, yeah. There's
Are
a
you
lot of
seeing
energy, yeah, with younger people, yeah,
are you seeing a big uptick in new voter registration?
yes. Not necessarily, I'd have to get the statistics on Virginia so far. Actually, I'm gonna put something into the chat. This is a great resource. You can Google this. This is the VPAP. Actually, I'll put that in there, and then I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go get the website real quick to VPAP.
Okay, and in the meantime, we have a question. What impact might older adults who vote have on this year's election?
Again, I'll look at the numbers after the election.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how these demographics
I mean, what's important is that everyone vote. Don't just register to vote, get out and vote.
follow through and vote. Yes, absolutely. And I
It
just put
plummets the
in,
pollsters.
yeah, and I just put in the website to VPAP, which is the I'll get the name of it right here. It's the Virginia, it's Virginia Public Access Project, and it is nonpartisan. They report on so many statistics. The questions that you're asking about, you know, the generational voters, what's the impact of the older voters? They do a lot of statistical analysis on what they're seeing, data wise, of how many registrations across the state and what's happening. They have information about campaign funding. That's another huge issue in Virginia, is campaign finance reform, which is almost impossible to get that happen, because both Republicans and Democrats don't want to give up their funding sources. That's a whole,
Right.
yeah, that's a whole nother talk right there. But VPAP has tons of statistics about elections in Virginia. It's an excellent site.
Okay, just so you both know, we're about 8 minutes to 11.
Okay.
And the next question is the League of Women Voters recruiting new members.
Yes.
What's involved in joining? What do you do? Is there a fee,
There is.
training? What happens?
So what happens is you can reach out on our website, and I'll provide that also. You can take a look at our website. So it's right now it's $60 a year to join, and our predominant role is to register voters. That's our key reason for existing. But we also do we're going to be doing a candidate forum on the 6th of October. We'll have more information on that as plans solidify. We have a fantastic affordable housing committee that does a lot of really good work, both in Alexandria and Arlington. We have election security committee. It's really more like a listserv right now, where information is exchanged about the things that we've been talking about, the rumors around the voting machines changing votes. There's also public outreach and education. As I said earlier, we're going to be kicking off an education program both in Arlington and Alexandria In fact, Connie is working on that directly, and the first one is tomorrow night at the library about the roles of the registrar in Arlington, and also the role of the electoral board. The next one is going to be what's the role of the treasurer and the commissioner of revenue. So things like that we're going to you have in Arlington and also mirror in Alexandria. So there's a big educational piece that we'll be doing. We do a lot of education around ranked choice voting. We have public events on learning about ranked choice voting and actually participating in it so that you understand the counting process. We have a huge program in the high schools for registering the high school students that'll be turning 18. They do it in the classrooms in Arlington and in Alexandria. So there's lots of stuff to do. And I'll send the website and the joining link to my contact also, so she can pass that information to you.
Okay, and just to repeat, you said
Hello,
earlier, you don't have to
hello.
be, that men can join the league.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have a
Hello.
couple.
Yes, I have
Yes.
a question, a quick question. I live in a HOA where the annual voting for candidates in my building, we hire the Women's League of Voters. And I'm terribly disappointed in what is going on. I don't want to expand on it more, but I'm very, I need to speak to someone like Pamela Berg.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying very much to get in touch with people at the Women's League, but there's only a P.O. box.
Mm-hmm.
No telephone number. I have been in touch with the DC Women's League of Voters,
Mm-hmm.
and only thing that they gave me was an 804 Richmond phone number,
Okay.
and it's a dead end. It's a dead end. And this is very important to me because I am a homeowner, a condo owner, and we pay for everything here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very important that the Women League of Voters educate the people in the residents in my HOA about how the process works. And I need very much to talk to someone about it because it's
Okay.
very upsetting. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Is there a telephone number?
No, I'm gonna ask you to use the email.
Yeah,
put-
I have their email. I have
Okay.
their email. Is there okay, I have their email.
Right.
And I sent the email to the DC office. I've also sent it to the P.O. Box office in Arlington. No response. No response.
Okay. And are you reachable at the 703-981-1633 number?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments? Well, it's 10:59. So I think we may have come to the end here. Cheryl, do you have anything to say?
Well, I was certainly going to thank Pamela and Connie for their presentation this morning. I was peppering them with questions. I've always been interested in elections. And so I thought, well, I'll just keep throwing things out there to find out. And I definitely agree that educating people about voting is so important. I mean, I don't think people, and this is again a personal opinion, but having traveled to other countries, and I can always remember years ago going to the Soviet Union, which at that time, you know, had all these different countries in the USSR. And I remember coming back and just kissing the ground and just wanting to shout out to my fellow citizens how important it is to be able to vote. And you know, I don't think people realize that sometimes. So I thank the League of Women Voters for everything that you do during this election season to get people out there to register and to vote. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everybody who is a regular attendee of Coffee and Conversation the next week, Wednesday, September 18th, the title of the presentation is The Impact of Alzheimer's and Dementia in Our Community. We'll have several representatives from the Alzheimer's Association, the National Capital Area. Ashley Scott, Program Manager, and Michael Smith, a volunteer. And they'll be providing a lot of information. So be sure and join us again, Coffee and Conversation at 10 o'clock on Wednesday, September 18th. And meanwhile, enjoy this beautiful weather and have a good week.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.